Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of Email Marketing Mastery. Before we get started today, I considered changing today's episode and talking to you about COVID-19 and email marketing in the time of COVID-19. I decided against it simply because there's so much information out there right now. There's so many companies talking about it that me adding to that adds absolutely no value. Looking at email, looking at my own inbox, the number of or the volume of email has tripled easily. Looking at some of the ESPs that I worked with, their own volume has tripled, some of them more than tripled during this time. So I'm not going to add to all that information that's already out there about this. I'm not going to talk about it too much. I just want to say one thing. If you are sending out emails during this time, if you don't have anything of value to say to your customer or to your prospective customer about COVID-19, then don't send that email, right? Companies that, physical companies, restaurants, stores that has physical locations that are closing down, those kind of things, those have something important to say to their customer at this time, right? Leave those messages to those customers. If you have a physical office, you have support staff working in those offices that deal with your customers, and you need to let your customers know that, look, my staff is working from home now because of all the self-quarantine and those kind of things that's going on. But don't worry, they are working from home. We will be answering your support questions. Those kind of messages are fine, but let's keep it to those kind of messages where it's important to inform your customer of what is going on in your business as it relates to them, only to them. If you're an information marketer or you've got a SaaS product and most of your staff are remote anyway, you don't need to tell your customer anything, right? As long as you keep serving them in the way that you have been serving them, that's all you need to do. That's all you need to say. And that's it. That's all I'm going to say on COVID-19. Stay safe out there. I look forward to talking to you at the end of this crisis when we get out of it. I know we will, right? As there's an old saying that I love to use and that I live by. This too shall pass. Right, and with that, let's head into today's episode. Welcome to episode 10. I'm very happy to be able to get to episode 10. And today we're going to talk about delivery rate versus deliverability or inbox rate, right? And we're going to look at how that's measured and the difference between the two. Right, so delivery rate versus deliverability rate or inbox rate. There are many important metrics to monitor when it comes to identifying the quality of an ESP or of your own email marketing system. Two of these are very important when it comes to having your subscribers actually receiving your messages. The one is easy to measure and report on, while the other is much more fluid and extremely hard to accurately track and report on. So let's dive into those two metrics right now. Right, so let's start with delivery rate. So most ESPs out there claim some crazy high delivery percentage, right? It's not uncommon to see something like 99.97% delivery rate quoted. So the biggest problem with this metric is that it's pretty much worthless. And before I go into explaining that a little bit more, here's the other big problem with delivery rate that's quoted that high, right? Somebody that doesn't understand email marketing, somebody that's new to email marketing, that's heard all the hype around it, they go looking for an ESP, they find the ESP, they see an ESP quote a number like 99.97% delivery rate. For many customers, they assume that that is how many messages are landing in the inbox. So it's a very deceptive number, and let me be clear, the ESPs are not trying to be deceptive. They are quoting their actual real number. The problem is the customers don't understand what the delivery percentage compared to the deliverability or inbox percentage is. All right, So let's dive into these. So what exactly is delivery rate? It is basically just the number of messages that were accepted by the receiving mailbox provider, but it does not in any way show how many messages are actually making it to the inbox of the subscribers. So I'm going to use an example, a very low number here. So if an ESP is sending 10,000 messages and 9,987 of those messages are accepted for delivery by the mailbox providers, this means that the ESP can then claim 99.87% delivery rate. And this is calculated by taking 9,987 divided by 10,000 gives you 0.9987, and you times that by 100 to get a percentage, which is then 99.87%, so 99.87%. So to be clear, as I've already said, the ESP is not lying nor deceiving anyone. They are just not stating that the metric being given is nothing more than a mostly vanity metric. So obviously it is important to get the messages accepted by the mailbox providers, but what is more important is how many are actually making it to the inboxes of their customers. So if the delivery rate is low though, I would say anything below 98%, that in itself is indicative of a much bigger and deeper problem at the said ESP or your own email marketing system if you're running an in-house system. The low number is a sign of high bounces, which is bad, low list quality, which obviously is very bad, and then even worse is low customer quality, if specifically in the case of an ESP. So a high delivery rate is in no way guarantees high inbox rates, but a low delivery rate almost certainly guarantees that a high percentage of messages are going to the spam folder at the mailbox providers due to bad ESP reputation with them. Right, so deliverability or inbox rate, right? So this is the more important, or actually, this is the number one metric to track. This is much more difficult to track though, and no ESP actually quotes an inbox rate purely because it is such a difficult metric to track. So let's dig into how exactly the inbox rate can be measured. So the first one is seed lists. Now, let me just switch over to my camera here. I very quickly touch on seed list in this episode, and as you'll see at the end of this episode, next week's episode, we're focusing purely on seed lists, right? So we're going to do a deep dive onto seed list in episode 11 next week. Right, so a seed list is a list of email addresses added to the main outgoing email and are monitored automatically for where they land at the mailbox provider. So in theory, this is a great idea and it works well for the smaller mailbox providers, which are simple spam algorithms. But for the bigger, more complex mailbox providers like Gmail, these are all but useless. So Gmail will, for instance, put the same message from the same sender in the inbox of one subscriber while putting it in the spam folder of another subscriber. And this is not conjecture. This has been tested and proven many times over. So the reason for this is all about the algorithms measuring things like engagement, sending IP reputation, sending domain reputation, links in the email reputation, engagement from the subscribers, and a whole horde of things they don't ever make public. Just to give you an idea, so on one presentation that I was watching from one of the Email Experience Council webinars, I don't think it was a webinar, it was, anyway, Gmail came out and they said that for every single message that they receive, they look at over 200 different data points, right, to decide what they're going to do with that message, right? And that's for every single message that they receive. And this obviously is all automatic, all in the background, all algorithms that does all of this stuff, right? So, yeah, seedless when it comes to that kind of stuff is, it is a helpful pointer to give you an idea of what's going on, but it is by no means definitive. Right, so the next step, or a different way of measuring inbox placement is tools that have access to your inbox provider through an API, and I specifically name a tool here because it's a very well-known tool called Boxby. So a company called eDataSource owns Boxby, right? So eDataSource is an email analytics platform that was acquired by SparkPost last year. So SparkPost is an SMTP provider. So they're basically a platform for ESPs or for big senders to send out their messages without having those senders have an in-house sending platform. Anyway, just giving you a little bit of background there. So eDataSource owns Boxbee, and it is used to accurately monitor actual placement of messages sent by ESPs and other bulk mailers. The problem with this approach is that the end users have to actually grant permission to Boxbee to read all their email all of the time. They need enough users using the system to make the statistics viable. And also, of course, to make sure that most of the email being sent is actually seen to be able to report on it. And this, just for interest's sake, this is called panel data. So Boxbee is a very useful service on its own, but in today's day and age where there's a very strong focus on personal privacy, I have to wonder how long a service like this will last. And I just have to say that, you know, I set up this presentation, I set up this, all the text in here, I did all of the research, and this was a while back, right? I know I'm doing it live right now on March the 19th, 2020, but at the time that I did this research, Boxbee was still alive and well and doing fantastic. I don't know whether the service actually still exists, but I do know that Gmail specifically has stopped Boxbee from being able to access the messages in your mailbox. I don't know if Boxbee is changing stuff. The last I heard that's going away. And because of that, eDataSource is also changing the way that they monitor, right? So they now have something called normal seed list, and then they have got smart seed lists. And we'll cover the smart seed list in next week's episode. We'll dig a little bit deeper into that. So sadly, as far as I'm aware right now, Boxbee doesn't work anymore to gather the data that eDataSource requires, right? But again, we'll dig deeper into the smart seed lists next week. So Boxbee is not the only service like this owned by a company that provides data on email placement at mailbox providers. There are a few others, and I think most of them will be facing the same challenges that Boxbee is right now because of the way that the policies has changed at Gmail. Right, so please note also that I do not condemn these services in any way. They serve a valuable purpose, and like in the case of Boxbee, they are actually very useful to the end user. Right, so let's look at a couple of inbox placement factors. Right, so there are several factors that contribute to inbox placement, many of them outside the control of the ESP, making it even harder to give a true inbox rate metric. All the factors are outside the scope of this article, but let's have a quick look at some of the major ones. And we have discussed this in the past, and I'm sure we'll dig deeper into a lot of these going into the future. Right, so the from name. This is the first thing that any subscriber on your list looks at, right? They need to immediately recognize it to ensure they open it to begin with. The more subscribers open and interact with your messages, the better your reputation with said mailbox provider. The higher the probability of your message being placed in the inbox of those subscribers. Consistency is key here, and is highly suggested that once you start using a specific from name, you rarely, if ever, change it. The from address. Very much the same as the from name, although many subscribers won't look too closely at the from email address, but the mailbox providers does look at this. And the from email address does build a reputation with the mailbox providers. So again, be consistent with your from address and rarely, if ever, change it. And as we discussed last week, do not use a no reply at from address. Subject line. So this is the second thing that a subscriber looks at. The subject line sells the open. As mentioned in the from name part above, the more subscribers open your email and interact with your email, the better your engagement reputation becomes with the mailbox provider, and the more likely it is that the mailbox provider will place your email in the inbox of the subscriber. But do not under any circumstances use deceptive subject lines. Not only is it illegal, but it will alienate your subscribers and greatly increase the likelihood of the subscriber marking your messages as spam. Content. So whereas the subject line sells the open, the content sells the action. The action of an email is not always to have the subscriber click a link. It could be to get them to respond to your message, or get them to make a phone call, or get them to go to a physical location. Right now, obviously, we don't want that. The better and more engaging your content, the higher the chances the subscriber to take the action that you are intending for them to take. Engagement, right? So engagement is critical for your continued success with your email marketing program, and it is one of the highest value metrics that mailbox providers look at. So engagement are things like opening the email, replying to the email, clicking a link in the email, moving the email into a folder, and definitely not the spam folder. And that is the end of today's episode. I hope you found it helpful. I hope you agree with me on not digging into COVID-19. I think that is, again, beyond the scope of these episodes. And as always, questions, pop it into the comments box, whether it's on the live show or on the replay. I'll see those comments, I'll respond to those comments, or send an email to emm@inboxjam.com, and I'll get to those questions as quickly as I possibly can. And then next week, as I said before, on episode 11, we're going to dig deep on seed lists. So next week, Thursday, the same time. If you enjoy this content, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you next week, Thursday, at the same time. Thank you. Bye-bye.